There were some fights on the weekend. Let's talk about them.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your main event.
Live from HBF Stadium Festival Hall. Melbourne Pavilion. Not even backstage, we're literally outside.
Was that the best fight card in Australian MMA history?
Call me crazy, but make sure you call me when I'm right.
Be good if the Aussie MMA Instagram page would give us a bit of glow up because we're killing it.
Welcome to the Australian MMA podcast. My name is Mitchell Tinley, and we're going to break down the Eternal MMA 88 fights that took place September 14th, Southport Sharks in the Gold Coast in Queensland. You can see that card if you haven't already on UFC Fight Pass. In the results, we had Matty Iann taking out Jean Alexander. We had Nate Law beating Connor Downey. Christian Lapham took out the ever so tough Damian Volar. Of course, David Martinez got the win over Luke Daly. We had Tasar Malone stop Jesse Medina, a 30-fight veteran. And John Martin Fraser just proved that he could very well be the best middleweight in Australia, putting Alfred Stoddart to sleep. Let's break them all down. First fight, Matty Iann out of Australian top team taking on Jean Alexander out of Ignite. What a lead up. If you haven't jumped on Australian MMA underscore on Instagram or Eternal MMA, there was a bit of a weigh-in sort of melee, ruckus, argy-bargy, if you will. Shout out to the rugby union game of 2005. Look, it got a bit heated at the weigh-ins. Even Cam O'Neill got in on the action. We nearly saw him enter the heavyweight ranks in Australian MMA. But no, if go check out the video, it was a bit of push and shove, and it was a really, really highly energetic and testosterone-filled event and fight that we got to see in the lead up. And as soon as the fight started, Matty Iann sprinted across the cage. Verdum, Travis Brown, Jorge Masvidal, Ben Askren style. But unfortunately, no highlight reel knockout there. But look, it was all Matty Iann. Look, he's a very credentialed kickboxer, but a very good grappling display by him. Now, a lot of the boys at Australian top team, shout out to Suman and the boys, who they get a bit of a bad rap at the weigh-ins and backstage and that. They're just like a passionate bunch, man. Okay, sometimes it gets a little crazy. But look, they're great guys. All of them have been nothing but great to me. And every single one of them is so high on Matty Iann. I do believe they're going to try and build him up slowly, not sort of throw him into the fire straight away. So I think it's going to be a slow build. So I don't really know what's next for either of those boys. Jean Alexander, no idea what's next, but I think it's his first pro fight in like 3 or 4 years, and I think I heard 5 on the broadcast, but I think it's like 3 or 4 years, and he's kind of bounced around some gyms. So who knows what's next for him, but he's definitely a talented fighter. Matty Iann, I think if I could have a guess, I reckon like a Daniel Mitchell, at bantamweight, like just to sort of build him up slow, see if he can kind of take these certain guys and what he can do with the sort of step up in not necessarily talent, but sort of resumes and experience. But Matty Iann, if you aren't already aware, he is definitely one to watch, and an Australian top team have some good up and comers. A lot of guys will be competing at the West Coast Combat Series over in Perth on the weekend. So look, definitely keep an eye on the guys kind of just jumping out of the amateurs into the pros. I feel like they've got a new wave of future champions in there. Nate Law and Connor Downey. Connor Downey fought the Law, and the Law won. Look, Nate Law is out of the Fight Centre in Queensland. I think it's out in Logan. Basically, like, if by the look of him and how he fights, he is Ben Johnston's love child, without a doubt. Nate Law, I think, coming across the ditch in like a bit of an exchange program. We send the Maokis over there, and we get the likes of Nate Law and Kassid Murdoch. It's a nice little thing we have with New Zealand going on. But look, Nate Law, I've heard a lot of good things. Ben Johnston has talked him up non-stop, and I wasn't too sure because every gym kind of has a guy that they push. And you're not really too sure. But to explain how amazing his performance was, Connor Downey's last fight against Michael Moss, who was an absolute stud, and I believe even went back and forth with the great Josh Kulabau back in the day. And he is an undefeated amateur, spent time in the military, an absolute beast of a fighter. He lost to Connor Downey in 35 seconds via a heel hook. So Connor Downey's jiu-jitsu is like next level. Very impressive. And Nate Law did like a very was it Dan Hooker versus Claudio Poulos or whatever, the guy that just like kept diving on his legs and all that sort of stuff. And he just stayed so calm. And yeah, it was very like Hooker-esque, which is quite funny because, you know, city kickboxing and New Zealand and whatnot, but he just stayed so calm. And then he kind of turned it all around. And everyone knows in mixed martial arts, the danger with diving after the legs is the fact that you can get punched in the face. And Connor Downey, Nate Law did just that. He laid down the law. It's the last pun of that. But he did incredible. Nate Law, I don't really kind of maybe like a Peter Templar. Next, it's just thought. If you don't know who Peter Templar is, he's a guy that's kind of disappeared for a bit of a year. But he once beat Lockie Stitt back in the day, about a year and a half ago. So I think Nate Law versus someone like that would be a nice bout. Who else I got here? Oh, that's another one. That Dylan Lahari. Dylan Lahari out of Absolute MMA, a super accomplished grappler who put on a real dominant performance at Demolition Fight Series 15 against Isaac Dean, a guy that weighed 2 kilos over the limit, which seems to be a bit of an occurrence in Australian MMA lately. But yeah, Dylan Lahari, and I think he's a really accomplished grappler, like really highly regarded. So I think if Nate Law did what he did to Connor Downey, it would be nice to see what he can do against Dylan Lahari, who's probably a bit better on the feet and a bit more of an overall MMA fighter. So I don't know, just thinking, just throwing it out there. Once again, let me know your thoughts, Australian MMA _ or on the YouTube video. Christian Lapham versus Damian Volar. It's like, Jesus Christ. Like, Damian, what is your chin made out of? It's ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. Christian Lapham, White Lightning, Brenton Mumford, singing his praises, and he has for a very long time. Storm is a coming. Lapham is just doing well. I really like it. He's getting some tough fights, getting some minutes in, getting it all out there. You just know, he can knock people out. You look at him, obviously what he's done in the past, but he can fight, like, and he can put people away. You know that. But I actually kind of like watching guys like this get indecisions and back and forth, especially against a guy like Damian Volar, who is in a very unique place when I think he was 8-1 as an amateur, which involved middleweight and light heavyweight. This fight, of course, at middleweight. But Damian Volar being 0-2, it's going to be very hard for him to get a fight. If he's down on his luck, don't be. Australia loves you. Your chin should be studied, Mr. Volar. And don't forget, if anyone isn't aware, the great Jack Della, who is soon to be one of our greatest exports we've ever put into the world of mixed martial arts, he started 0-2. So any young fighters out there, or anyone sort of discrediting anyone with a bit of a tough start to their professional career, just remember, one of the top 5 fighters we've ever produced started at 0-2. When it comes to Christian Lapham, White Lightning, I think he should take on, speaking of the man, Alfred Stoddart. They've fought before. I think Lapham won by split decision. Might have been at Demolition Fight Series, not sure. Check him out either way. But Christian Lapham, everyone's high on him. Stoddart has kind of jumped a few people type thing, but unfortunately he's kind of had a mixed bag of results. I think that fight would be cool to run back in the pros because they did it in the amateurs. Unless they've got other plans for White Lightning, but that is my forecast. Martinez versus Luke Daly. David Martinez, we have had our chat. 2.1 kilograms. Not good. He will no longer fight at lightweight, as the great Ben Vickers said on the broadcast, and he was commentating, and he is one half of every decision made at Eternal MMA. He said he will never fight for the lightweight title as long as Ben Vickers is in charge. Speaking about himself, of course. Yeah, Martinez, you have to go to either super lightweight or welterweight. I assume most people are a bit scared of super lightweight because there's no like UFC division. And I feel like we kind of just hang on the fact of like whatever the UFC do, we do, because, you know, everyone wants to get there. So why be the number one at lightweight if there's no division for you? Like, it makes sense. Welterweight, who knows? I mean, David's not the tallest guy in the world. Result, if you don't know, obviously David Martinez just out-decisioned Luke Daly the way he does a lot of people. I don't like giving it too much light because unfortunately the weight miss, and it's like the third out of fourth time, and like this fight weighed over. The previous two fights I think were cancelled against Antonio Caruso and then against Luke Daly's teammate Harry Webb. So it's not looking good for Martinez. He has to like almost hire a new PR manager to sort of sort out what he wants to do. And I know a lot of people in his corner want to kind of talk to him and sort of sort this problem out, because I said it before in my sort of recap, which I don't think I was too harsh on him. I think I was saying what we all kind of are thinking when it comes to David Martinez is that he is hurting his legacy. No one is doubting that he is one of the best mixed martial artists in Australia, but he can't keep doing it. He can't keep missing weight. So I think he should go up to welterweight. And if you pay attention to Australian MMA _ on Instagram, it's the place to be. It's where you can see all this stuff first. The great Hoshi Friedrich, who is welterweight, been around for a while, recently went down to Kandiata by knockout. He's a smaller welterweight as well. He called out David Martinez. He said, if you want to come to welterweight, let's dance. And I think that's a good fight for Martinez. We can get an idea of kind of what he's going to look at welterweight. I think that could be a nice little fight to make. You could argue that Martinez could go straight to the top and fight anyone at welterweight. I do agree, but I'd like to see him kind of come in and if he can, dominate sort of a matchup at welterweight and kind of get back on the right side of the public so people can start cheering for him again, because we all know that, look, he's the nicest guy in the world, but he can't keep missing weight as it's sort of messing up other people's careers. Which brings me to Luke Daly. Now, a lot has been said about this man, but this is the most gangster man there ever was. Look, he took on a fight. He's had fights cancelled. The fights with Don Marfan fell out, then got moved, then fell out again. And then he takes on David Martinez, who was already a tall task, had already missed weight, and had a fight sort of cancelled against his teammate. To then kind of surprised but not surprised, have to fight a guy who was a grappling heavy guy, 2.1 kilos heavier than they agreed. I think it's a travesty for Luke Daly, and this sort of shit, like, it messes up people's like careers. It really does. Like, those kilos matter, especially in the grapple and whatnot. Luke Daly made weight and looked very good. People might not know, but he has a suspected tear in his rotator cuff that he got in the first round. So not only is it gangster enough to take on perhaps the best mixed martial arts grappler in Australia, 2.1 kilograms heavier than you agreed, but to do it basically with one arm. And then to do what Luke Daly did at the end of the fight, which looked like he was really starting to hurt Martinez, it's just unfortunate. And now, I mean, look, Luke Daly could have hurt his arm against anyone, don't get me wrong, but it feels worse that he kind of did it in this fight in this manner. So I feel very sorry for Mr. Daly. Yeah, so I hope you recover. Hopefully it's a quick recovery and you get back. I've got just fights for Luke Daly. I think maybe when he comes back, when he's ready, I don't know how long he's going to be out for. But I hope everything in Ballarat sort of simmers down and they get to go back to doing what they are kind of getting really well known for. I wouldn't mind him taking on like a Michael Stanoff. I think he's 3-3 now. Maybe 3-2. I don't know if we'll see a Lions Den guy for good reason on Eternal MMA, as obviously the George Mangos ditching out of the Grand Prix. I don't know if they're on the best terms, although what Eternal does do well is if it's best for business, they can kind of move past a lot of things. So I don't mind Michael Stanoff versus Luke Daly, but I actually think we will probably see like Tim Rogers. So he fought Don Marfan, and he's done like a lot of damage in the Adelaide scene and smashed a lot of guys over there. So I think Tim Rogers, I think he's 4-1 now. Him versus Luke Daly when he's ready to go. I think that would be a nice fight. Tasar Malone putting a stop to the 30-fight veteran in Jesse Funky Cold Medina. Now, Tasar Malone was the 2023 Breakout Fighter of the Year for Eternal MMA. They are very high on him. I think he's 4-0 right now, and he called for a shot with Seb Saleh, but I don't think, as much as I love Tasar Malone, I don't think beating Jesse Medina qualifies you for a shot just yet. It definitely qualifies you for a number one contender fight. I just don't think, I think there's a few other guys that you kind of have to get through. I also think that depending on time, recovery and whatnot, I feel like for eternity, that number one contender spot is reserved for Mr. Kevin Cophamel, who had a fight of the century against the human highlight reel, Harry Webb, with some people even thinking that Kevin got the chocolate. So I think Kevin Cophamel wants to fight with Seb Saleh for the featherweight belt in October, Perth versus Perth, October 26th. It'd be very, even though Seb Saleh's at Freestyle MMA in Wollongong, he's a Perth boy. So I think that featherweight title fight would be the fight to make. Tasar Malone, what have I got here? I think like maybe if you want to welcome Diego Pereira, El Pantada Negra Pereira, back from Beatdown, who had a nice little fight over there. Wouldn't be surprised. I don't know if, Diego wants to come back to Eternal at all, but Tasar versus Diego, I think would be a nice fight. Or even welcome Jarrett Wilbraham, who fell short from George Mangos for the Hex featherweight title. I think if you bring Jarrett back and Tasar, I think that would be almost a guaranteed fight of the night. Both very exciting guys. Both guys live in their vans. So loser has to go live in a house. I don't know. What's your thoughts? But yeah, that's my bet. That's what I would do. If I was a promoter, I'd go Jarrett Wilbraham, Tasar Malone. The fight would take place in a van. Oh, before I move on, Jesse Funky Cold Medina. Love Medina so much. He's just the greatest guy in the whole wide world as well. I don't really know what's next for him. I think potentially he might have to, if he doesn't hang it up, I don't know what he wants to do, but he might have to be the old gatekeeper. And I mean that as with the utmost respect, but maybe like, welcoming like your Kyle Maokis and the sort of those up and coming, who have I got here? And like Val Sharapov or Alistair Volders, who I think are fighting each other October 19th at Rogue. So that's going to be a real fight to watch as well. But yeah, I think Jesse Medina is going to have to, his next fight, he's going to get one of those sort of 2-0, 3-0 guys. And he's going to have to knock a couple of those guys off before he's sort of thrown back into the real mix of making waves again at featherweight. But we will see if he even continues to fight. And finally, John Martin Fraser, the old Welsh whip, put on a Welsh whooping on Alfred the Maker Stoddart. He did not, in fact, meet the Maker, or he did, but he made him go to sleep. John Martin Fraser is just an absolute stud. Like, he was training out of the Dunstan Death Squad, Ignite, and whatnot. And when he made the move over to Team Compton, and I've personally seen him training under the great Steve Compton and, of course, Tom Nolan, Don Marfan, Elliot Compton, who's an absolute stud, Blair Bratag, who future champion in himself, of course, UFC fighter Stewie Nickel, and some good up-and-coming fighters in Aiden Gould and Ethan Mitchell. John Martin Fraser, he's loving it, loving life, getting ready for a kid, going to start his own business. He's just like he's on top of the world, and he looks incredible. He's done his little world tour of training last year, which we covered. He's been to Bali, he's been to Perth. He'll travel anywhere to get better and make the right decisions. He almost has the mentor of UFC great Kyle Noak. Shout out to the former bodyguard of the great Steve Irwin. There you go. If you know any of this stuff, there's a whole lot of facts coming at you right now. But John Martin Fraser just looked the best he's looked. He really showed that Alfred Stoddart is not potentially like ready for that level of guy, as in like top. But you know, round of applause for Alfred Stoddart. He called for this matchup at, I think he was 3-2. No one calls out John Martin Fraser, let alone being just 3-2 and so early in your career. John Martin Fraser, he's called out Darcy Vendy. I don't know if Darcy Vendy is going to take that fight yet. I know that there's like a plan for Darcy Vendy and it might not involve John Martin Fraser yet. He's not, and I don't want to hear it. I know people have their opinions on Darcy Vendy and how he's gone about his career. Man's a business. So I understand why he has a certain direction in where he needs to go. And I think more people, and this is a very unpopular opinion, I understand this, but I think more fighters need, and promoters will hate me saying this, but I think more fighters need to like understand that they are a business. I do believe that anyone will fight anyone, anywhere, anytime, and has all the talent in the world and all that sort of stuff. But how you take on fighters and when you take on fighters, that's important because you've got to build your business the right way. So I don't know if Darcy Vendy will be next in line for Mr. Martin Fraser. I do think we see that fight one day. I just don't know if it is yet. I would love to see Ben Johnston versus John Martin Fraser, but and I don't know anything, no one's told me anything, I do not think that happens at all. I don't think John Martin Fraser and Ben Johnston, because Ben Johnston kind of wants the UFC or nothing, and I can't see him risking it all again just to stay active after his 20-year career type thing, to turn back around and then take on a guy he's already beaten who could knock him out. So I don't think we see that fight either. I don't think Matt Myers is still not ready from what I'm hearing. I know he's getting very close, but as soon as Matt Myers is ready, I think he gets a title shot immediately, even above John Martin Fraser. But yeah, there's not a whole lot left for Mr. Martin Fraser. So I think if he doesn't get Darcy Vendy, I can go for a little trip over to Cage Warriors. I know that in Europe, I know that he wasn't too far off doing that before. I know I don't want John Martin Fraser to head on off to the Cage Warriors, but I don't think there's much left for him. If he doesn't get Darcy Vendy, he's just kind of spinning his wheels. And I don't know what they're going to do with the belt. And even if they do have the belt, it's like, who does John Martin Fraser take on? He could, let's say Ben Johnston drops the belt, and John Martin Fraser goes for the belt against a Cage Warriors, like a level of opponent, and then Eternal bring him over, which they look to be doing for October 26th in Perth with the great Chris Fishgold coming back over, who was, I think, defended the belt 3 times at Cage Warriors at lightweight, and obviously on a bit of a skid, but absolute stellar talent. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the other stuff that happened at Eternal at the end of this. But yeah, John Martin Fraser, absolute stud. I think he goes international, or they bring an international opponent for the belt. If I had to guess, and all of this is guessing, so don't get too mad. For Mr. Stoddart, what have I got written here? I don't know what he does, honestly. It's so tricky for him. I mean, he's 3-3 now. He's had some whoopings, as in he hands them out, or he gets caught and put to sleep early. It's become like a bit of a weird joke between us. Every time he interviews with me, he ends up getting knocked out in the first round. But look, he just, it's going to happen. When you cook with fire, sometimes you're going to get burnt. I don't know what's next for him, Mr. Stoddart. I just want you to look after your head, because there's a lot in it. You're very smart. You're very wise. And you go about this career very different. And you will be missed in Australian MMA if you don't continue. And I know you want 40 fights and you're only at 5, and there's plenty more to come, but please look after your brain. It's very important. And yeah, I don't know what's next for him, but I hope it's rest. Guys, another thing that was brought up, the Eternal MMA 89, I think it was, announced for October 26 in Perth. Alden Bates is back, taking on Stephen Costello. That's going to be a banger. I feel for Alden Bates, man, because Jono Mikhailov, who is an absolute stud, and obviously recently just beat Matt Vale on Hex. He's off to Dynamite Contender Series. You got to feel for Alden Bates, who is knocking people dead and not getting his chance or get to call up. It must be hard when you see like a Jono Mikhailov get the sort of run, which we all 100% agree he's an absolute stud. But I'm saying from like an Alden Bates point of view, it must be hard when you're like, man, I'm 37, I'm like knocking people dead. And even the guy that I like beat, he's off to Contender Series. Kind of like, what about me? I don't really know. Surely he's on the radar, like just like a short little fill-in. Like he's knocking, like I said, he's knocking dudes dead. Maybe we could see him take the old Joseph Luciano route, where we've seen Luciano do some damage in Bellator, where he subbed Stephen Hill. Of course, the great Sarah Collins there as well, who's now looking to be the #1 contender for Chris Cyborg's championship in Bellator. But yeah, I don't know. Like, Alden Bates, that's going to be a nice fight. They're bringing someone over. The guy that he's bringing over, Stephen Costello, has fought Ian Machado Gary, who you know from the UFC. Unfortunately, went down to him. But like, he's mixed it up with some really, really good guys. Of course, Jack Becker's back. And then, yeah, like I mentioned earlier, Chris Fishgold, who is basically used to be the tag team partner of Paddy Pimblett. He was the lightweight champion. Paddy was the featherweight champion in Cage Warriors. They were both at Next Gen in Liverpool, I believe. Chris Fishgold no longer there. He spent a stint in the UFC. Chris Fishgold has spent a stint in Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. Chris Fishgold is like as good as it gets. He's only 32. People are writing him off already. I'm going to be the one that sings so high on Chris Fishgold. I don't think you guys understand just how good that guy can be. He's just gone on a few little skids, but look, he's as good as anyone. He's taken on Raymark Quintana, who, as we talked about, Australian top team at the top of this. They are coming back, man. They're coming back hard. Of course, you guys remember Ashkar Mokhtar and Suman in the UFC and Alex Georgis. They're going to have a new wave. Keep an eye on them, and there's Australian top team are coming, and Raymark just might be the next guy signed in the UFC. Is coming off a stellar knockout over Blood Diamond, who is, longtime training partner of Israel Adesanya. I know I'm rambling off a little bit. There's no more talking about Eternal MMA 88, but just to let you know, Eternal MMA 89 is going to look good in Perth. I think it's 89 or 90, not sure. But yeah, check that out. Before I get done, October 19th is Rogue. Check out Rogue Championship in Melbourne. And then October 12th, just before that, is Beatdown, I believe. Let me just double check all of this. No, October 19th as well is Beatdown Promotions. And let me double check because maybe I've stuffed that up. Friday, October 11th is Rogue at Melbourne Pavilion in Melbourne. And October 19th, Beatdown Promotions in Queensland. Check those out. And then I think November 16th, if you want to see some up-and-comers, Demolition Fight Series 16 is back. Now, for everyone that's still listening, thank you. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Subscribe, like, let me know, comment. Go follow us on Instagram, Australian MMA_. Other than that, guys, I'll see you next time.